Alright, let's dive into something that's been buzzing in my mind lately: Australia's economy. Now, I know what you're thinking: another video about the economy. But trust me, this isn't your typical numbers-heavy, jargon-filled analysis. What caught my attention is this idea that, despite all the doom-scrolling and complaining, Australia is actually in pretty decent shape, economically speaking. And it's not just me saying this, it's backed by some fascinating insights from Dr. Stephen Kennedy, a former Treasury Secretary. So, let's break it down. Here's the hook: Australia is celebrating its 125th anniversary as a federation this year. Yes, 125 years. And while most of us are probably more focused on the latest Netflix series, this milestone got me thinking: how has Australia's economy fared over more than a century? What's really interesting is that, according to Kennedy, most of the major economic shocks Australia has faced came from outside its borders. Think about it: global events like the Great Depression, the OPEC oil shock, and the COVID-19 pandemic. What this really suggests is that, while we can't control these external forces, what does matter is how we respond to them. And here's where it gets fascinating. Australia's economic management has gotten significantly better over the past few decades. Personally, I think this is a huge testament to the adaptability of the country's policymakers. Now, let's talk about unemployment. Kennedy highlights that unemployment rates have been much more stable in recent years compared to the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. Back then, recessions would send unemployment soaring, and it would take years to recover. But since the early 90s, the rise in unemployment during crises like the Asian financial crisis and the global financial crisis has been much smaller. What makes this really interesting is the why behind it. Policymakers learned from past mistakes and implemented smarter strategies, like a floating dollar, decentralized wage setting, and more strategic use of interest rates. From my perspective, this is a prime example of how learning from history can lead to better outcomes. But here's a detail I find fascinating: Kennedy, who started his career as a nurse, emphasizes that unemployment isn't just a statistic, it's about people. He points out that prolonged unemployment can erode skills, confidence, and mental health. This raises a deeper question: how often do we, as a society, think about the human cost of economic policies? It's easy to get lost in charts and graphs, but Kennedy's perspective reminds us that every percentage point represents real lives. In my opinion, this human-centric approach is something more economists should adopt. Now, let's shift to inflation. One thing that immediately stands out is how Australia has managed to keep inflation relatively low and stable over the past 30 years. A big shout out to the Reserve Bank for this, especially after it gained independence in 1996. But what many people don't realize is that this stability didn't happen by accident. It's the result of deliberate policy decisions and a commitment to learning from past mistakes. If you take a step back and think about it, this is a huge achievement, especially when you compare it to other countries. Speaking of comparisons, let's talk about government debt. Australia's debt-to-GDP ratio is currently around 38%, which might sound high, but it's actually low by both historical and international standards. For context, the US is sitting at over 130%. What this really suggests is that Australia has been more prudent in managing its finances, especially during crises like the pandemic. Kennedy's advice here is spot on: governments should always expect the unexpected. Personally, I think this is a lesson every country could benefit from. Finally, let's touch on home ownership. There's a growing disconnect between mortgage payments and wages, and it's a problem that hasn't been solved yet. This raises a deeper question: how can we make housing more affordable without stifling economic growth? It's a complex issue, and I'm curious to see how policymakers tackle it in the coming years. So, here's my closing thought. Australia's economy isn't perfect, but it's in better shape than many realize. What makes this really interesting is the combination of historical lessons, smart policy decisions, and a focus on the human impact of economic choices. In my opinion, this is a story of resilience and adaptability. And as we look to the future, it's a reminder that economic success isn't just about numbers, it's about how those numbers affect real people. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.